Listening to the first half of our program with the process of Hajj and how that takes us through the process of Umrah initially, and then the time spent in Mina, and then in the Mount of Arafah, and then we get ready on after Maghrib time to move from Arafah to Muzdalifah. So it's very important that when you leave Arafah, you make sure you've been to the toilet and you've freshened up, because Muzdalifah is the open desert and there is very little facilities out there. It's just sleeping in the open desert overnight. So after sunset, you depart for Arafah, and from Arafah and head to Muzdalifah, an open plain between Mina and Arafat. Once you reach Muzdalifah, you perform your Maghrib and Isha Salah. So although you leave after sunset, you don't pray Maghrib at Arafah, you pray your Maghrib at Muzdalifah. And again, your Maghrib and Isha are one after the other, shortening each Salah to 2 rakats. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anha narrates the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam offered the Maghrib and Isha prayers together at Muzdalifah with a separate iqamah for each of them, and did not offer any optional prayers in between them or after each of them. Afterwards, you can then spend the night in worship or resting. The Prophet ﷺ went to sleep until shortly before Fajr, choosing not to engage in night worship as he normally did. So don't be tempted to exhaust yourselves, but rest instead, because you have a long day ahead of you. While in Muzdalifah, one of the things you could do during that night is walk around the open desert and try to pick some pebbles. You need to collect the pebbles to perform Rami, and that's called the stoning of the devil. And over the next 3 days, you're going to then use those pebbles in order to signify your disapproval of the desert. And that's done by throwing the disapproval of the shaitan. And this is done by throwing the pebbles. So the size of the pebbles could be similar to the size of a date stone or seeds. And you're going to need a total of 49. And it breaks down as follows. So you're going to need 7 pebbles for the 10th of Zilhijjah, which is the next day after the night, 21 for the 11th of Zilhijjah, and 21 again for the 12th of Zilhijjah. So it's advised that you pick up 21 pebbles as a precautionary measure to bring your total up to 70. So whether it be 49 or 70, you need a significant number of pebbles. When you proceed to the phases of throwing the pebbles at the Jamarat, you may wish to target, or some of the pebbles may fall from your hands. So it doesn't really matter. You don't have to necessarily hit the wall, and there's no part of the wall that you have to target for. It is a symbolic gesture to basically throw the pebbles, and this is your remembrance of what Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam did when they were going towards Arafat, and Hazrat Ismail was about to be sacrificed. Both father and son picked up pebbles and hit them on Shaitan to say, because Shaitan said to Ibrahim alayhi salam, don't do this, you're mistaken, you'll kill your son. And both father and son got the pebbles from the desert floor and they threw it at Shaitan. So in remembrance of that, today we do exactly the same. It isn't actually a Shaitan who is there. It is a symbolic gesture. Some people get overexcited and start throwing slippers and shoes and swearing and all sorts of things, and that is not acceptable. That is not to be done. The significance is to do what Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam did and Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam, was pick the pebbles and throw them, and that's it. So, pebbles can also be collected from anywhere in Mina as well. So if you find on that night in Muzdalifah you're not able to collect the pebbles, that itself isn't a major problem. You can collect them from Mina as well. So, inshallah ta'ala, we will now go to our next nasheed, which will be a shorter one again. Sami Yusuf Hasbi Rabbi.
Allah the Almighty, Allahu Allah, protect me and guide me, Allahu Allah. heart, your love and mercy. Ya Allah, don't deprive me from beholding your beauty. Oh, my Lord, accept this plea. حسبي ربي جل الله، الله الله، ما في قلبي غير الله، الله الله. Affeder günahı Allahu Allah, alemin padişahı Allahu Allah, yüreklerin penahı Allahu Allah. İşit Allah derdimi, bu ahlarımı, rahmeyle bağışla günahlarımı. Hayır eyle hem akşam hem sabahlarımı. Hasbi Rabbi Cellallah, Allahu Allah, ma fi kalbi gayrullah, Allahu Allah.
MashaAllah, that was Hasbi Rabbi. Okay, so after you have left Muzdalfa and gone to the Jamarat and done your first set of stoning, what would happen then is you would leave Jamarat and then you will be heading towards Makkah again. So you'll usually go back towards your hotels, which are in Makkah. However, that is just the first day of stoning. What is required then, and it is important that you do this, it is a sunnah, is for you to then go back to Mina and spend the day from Makkah. Go back to Mina, spend the day there, and then go back to Jamarat and do the second day of stoning, and then back to Mina, and then back to Jamarat and the third day of stoning. So this stoning is done over 3 days, and that's why we collect the 70 stones, the 70 pebbles, so that we have stones for each of the days. When we collect those from Muzdalfa, where we spent the night in the desert, we collect them from there. But for the next 3 days thereafter, we continue to do the stoning. And we use Mina as our base, not our hotels in Makkah. But some people like to just rest and go to their hotel in Makkah and do it from there. And of course, they can go to the Haram if they want to. But the focus isn't actually to be in Haram and Makkah at that time. The focus is to be in Mina, and between Mina and Jamarat, and back to Mina and Jamarat, and back to Mina, etc. So by day 3, which is the 10th of Zilhijjah, after performing the Fajr Salah, you will then depart Muzdalfa and go towards Mina. Remember that continuously recite the Talbiyah. On the 10th day of Zilhijjah is called the Yawm al-Nahr, the day of sacrifice. And for pilgrims of Hajj, this is the day when pelting pebbles at one of the Jamarat, as well as sacrificing an animal, becomes important. And for the rest of the Muslim world, this is the day for Eid. So whereas here in Wolverhampton we'll be celebrating Eid that day, the Hajis in Mecca will be doing their 3rd day of pelting, and also they will be doing their sacrifice. Following the sacrifice, you will then proceed to shave or trim your hair. And if you are male, the Prophet ﷺ said, shave your hair, as this is preferable. A woman just trims about a fingertip length from the bottom of her hair, and that's it, just cuts it off with a little pair of scissors, and she can do that herself, whereas the male will usually go to the hairdressers who are there. Now you are once you've shaved your hair, you're now allowed to leave the state of ihram and wear comfortable clothing, so you can go back in your normal clothing. You're also allowed to do everything that was unlawful during the state of ihram, except engaging in sexual intimacy. It is a sunnah to then apply perfume, as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ smelled strongly of musk at this point. After you have done your sacrifice, you've been informed by your agents that usually we don't get it done ourselves, so there's groups out there who will do the sacrifice for you. They'll inform your agent you'll have paid for that up front, and they will tell you that your sacrifice has been accepted or it's been done and given, the meat has been given to the poor. Thereafter, then you can shave your hair and you will come out of the state of ihram. Then you will now go to Mecca and perform Tawaf al-Fadha and Sahi as part of your Hajj rituals again. So Tawaf al-Fada, al-Ifada and Sa'i are obligatory, and they are the key parts of the Hajj. You must perform them after the Rami sacrifice and shaving or trimming of the head. This Tawaf and Sa'i can be done between the 10th and the 12th days of Dhul Hijjah. So with the completion of this Tawaf and Sa'i, you are then allowed to relax and do everything that was lawful before Ihram, including engaging in marital relations. You will, however, return to your tents in Mina and continue with the remaining rituals of Hajj. So what we have there is a sequence of events, and inshallah ta'ala, may Allah take us all there. The way I've described it here is quite fast, and it basically outlines the key events you have to do. But of course, this is over a period of 3, 4, 5 days when you are there. Each of these different actions make up what is called Hajj. They are all valuable, they are all important, they all have a significance, and the significance comes from Quran and Sunnah. And so what is very important, that may Allah Ta'ala take us there, we spend time, and I've given you a brief overview and a fairly fast overview because of the 1 hour session we have here. But it is important that we spend time and we study about Hajj, and we watch YouTube videos and we speak to people who've been out there, because it is imperative that if we have the means, we go. And if we go, we must make sure that we do things according to the right tarqib, according to the right methods. May inshallah ta'ala we benefit from this, and may inshallah ta'ala we be able to learn and go out there and be able to perform our Hajj so it is acceptable. The festival of Eid al-Adha for the feast of sacrifice is celebrated by Muslims who are not on pilgrimage by slaughtering animals to mark Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam's willingness to sacrifice his son Ismail alayhi salam upon the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there isn't an Eid for the Hajjis because they're busy doing various rituals in various stages. The rest of the Muslim world outside of Makkah, of course, or outside of the Hajj area, will of course have Eid al-Adha, which we're aware of. We meet our friends and relatives and have a day of feasting. Days 4 and 5, which are the 11th and the 12th of Dhul Hijjah, these days are known as Ayam al-Tashriq, and these are the days of meat, drying meat. During the time the Prophet ﷺ, pilgrims would preserve the Qurbani meat by seasoning and drying them under the sun to prevent the meat from rotting. And the Prophet ﷺ, these days of Tashriq are the days of eating and drinking. So you're required to stay in Mina and complete 2 more ramis. So as I mentioned earlier, these are the days when you stay from Mina, go back to Jamarat, and back to Mina, and back to Jamarat again. So I might have confused listeners. This is the days 3, 4, and 5, which is the 10th, 11th, and 12th, which you are doing the pebbles, throwing the pebbles on the Jamarat. So you're required to stay in Mina and complete 2 more Rami rituals on the 11th and 12th of Dhul Hijjah. On the afternoon of the 11th of Dhul Hijjah, you'll have your 21 pebbles ready and proceed to stone the 3 Jamarat. You will begin with Jamarat al-Ula, the small pillar, then Jamarat al-Busta, the middle pillar, and finally Jamarat al-Aqaba, the big pillar. Each one should be stoned with 7 consecutive pebbles accompanied by takbir. You will stop after the first and middle Jamarat and make dua facing the Qibla. Remember to take your spare pebbles with you in case you lose some. Once this is complete, you will return to your camp in Mina and spend the rest of the day in worship, making the most of the remaining time you have. You will then repeat the same the following day and then the 3rd day as well. By this point, all your rites and Hajj should have been performed, and you should be ready to depart to Makkah. Depending on your Hajj group, you may have a few rest days in Makkah, or you may depart to come to Medina. Usually then people leave Makkah and then come over to Medina. In any case, you will depart Makkah, you must perform the farewell tawaf. So right at the end, right on the last day of your time in Makkah, what's very, very important is that you go back to do your farewell tawaf, which is called Tawaf al-Wida. The farewell tawaf is the last rite performed before departing from Makkah. It is wajib, obligatory, so it's a key part of the Hajj, and must be performed prior to leaving the boundaries of the Haram. Omitting this tawaf without a valid reason is not deemed lawful in Islam. So the people were ordered to perform a Tawaf al-Wida as the last thing before leaving Makkah, except menstruating women who were excused. For this Tawaf you will complete the 7 laps of Tawaf, perform 2 rakats of Salah and drink Zamzam water. And there is no say or shaving or trimming as part of this Tawaf. And shukr alhamdulillah, that completes your Hajj. After you have done Tawaf al-Wida, Hajj Mubarak, you have now completed all the key aspects of Hajj. And may Allah Ta'ala, as I said, help us to get there. May Allah Ta'ala make it easy for us. And may we be able to actually appreciate the beauty of that event. Because, shukr alhamdulillah, for those of us who have been, it really is an amazing time. It really is a time when we achieve a lot, spiritually and mentally. And we are able to really understand our deen and how important our deen is. So, with that, I will now come to the end of the program. Inshallah ta'ala, next week Saturday will be our second day of Eid, and I will come back with a program around similar issues. May Allah ta'ala forgive me if I have made any mistakes or any errors. May Allah ta'ala give us all hidayat to be able to enjoy the importance of this time and to understand the importance of this time and to be able to really appreciate how the deen of Islam and through the worship of, through the obedience of these types of ibadat, by doing Hajj, etc., how we can be brought closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this helps us in our lives. May Allah ta'ala accept all of our du'as at this very, very spiritual time. The month of Zul Hijjah has started. It is a month where people fast, people spend time, sorry, not the whole month necessarily, but these days especially people fast, and people spend a lot of time in spirituality. Extra Quran is read, extra Nawafil are read. Obviously we give our sacrifice, we give our money towards our sacrifices, or we actually will do a sacrifice of an animal and then give the meat to poor. Make sure it's very important that we obviously feed our families, but also feed the poor as well. So this is an immense blessing. All of these things are an immense blessing, and they're really there to guide us and for us to understand the importance of spirituality in our lives. May Allah Ta'ala accept it all, and may Allah Ta'ala bless you all for listening. Forgive me if I've made any mistakes in this. Inshallah, I'll see you all next week. I'm going to now leave you with our last nasheed for this program, which is Zain Bika, Mom and Dad. Fi amanillah.
To steady me till I was ready to make a stand on my own 2 feet, while my world was crumbling down, and you tried your best to shelter me from the coming of the storm. You opened my eyes to see that all hope was not gone. You held me in your arms and wiped away my tears. Not even in a million years can I ever repay you for what you've done for me. You were there when I felt that there was no place for me. You were there to show me how to truly believe in the miracle of creation, in the good and the bad. Oh, how I love you, Mom and Dad. You were there to small to see a brighter tomorrow and face it bright and tall. When my head was down, you prayed for me, said I just need some time. You said to spread my wings and fly, give the world of what was inside. You taught me to try, to do my best to inspire people of every kind. That's a gift from Allah that I can never claim as mine. You were there when I felt that there was no place for me. You were there to show me how to truly believe in the miracle of creation, even when you're lost and scared. Oh, how I love you, Mom and oh, Allah bless them and always keep them safe from harm. Grant them places in paradise in your eternal salam. You were there when I felt that there was no place for me. You were there to show me how to truly believe in the miracle of creation, in the good and the bad. Oh, how I love you, Mom and Dad.
MashaAllah, that was Zain Bika, Mom and Dad. So, Jazakallah khair for listening to our program today, where we were looking at Hajj and the method of Hajj and how it all happens. Inshallah ta'ala, I will see you all next week. And during the course of Friday, Saturday and Sunday, obviously because it's going to be Eid, there will be a lot of special programs on Radio Ramadan Wolverhampton. So please do try to join us for all of those. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi fi amanillah.